There's the problem, and then there's the solution. People with mild cognitive impairment know what the problem is. It can be harrowing when your mind begins to fail. You walk into a room and you can't remember why you went there. Someone tells you something, and 5 minutes later you have to ask again. The problem begins when you notice these things, but the solution doesn't begin until you have a diagnosis. So let's talk about that today with Dr. Michelle Papka, who is an expert in diagnosing MCI. Hi, I'm Tony Deering of GoCogno.com, the website for people with mild cognitive impairment. For people with MCI, that diagnosis is essential. I talk about it a lot in my book, I Want My Mind Back. A good diagnosis represents the first, most fundamental step in confronting your MCI and giving you the best possible chance to slow, halt, or reverse whatever cognitive decline you're experiencing. But how is MCI diagnosed? What goes into a proper evaluation? For that, I turn to Dr. Michelle Papka, founder of the Cognitive and Research Center of New Jersey. She joined me on a Facebook Live recently, and today, in the first of 2 videos, she shares great insight on that. I began by asking, why is a diagnosis so important? Here's Dr. Papka.
As a result of normal aging, we do have declines in our cognition. So all areas of cognitive functioning decline over the lifespan. And it's important to understand whether the changes we're experiencing, first of all, are a result of normal aging or something else. The other thing is that there are many different things that can cause mild cognitive impairment, and it would be important to understand what is causing someone's mild cognitive impairment so that we can plan the right types of interventions. And what I often find is that when people have mild cognitive impairment, either they may dismiss it, or their doctors may dismiss it, or family members may dismiss it. And that's because, by definition, when someone has mild cognitive impairment, they're still functioning. So they may notice that there's something going on, and there may be some objective measure that there's something going on, but they're still basically able to function in their daily roles, which may prevent them or people around them from giving it the attention and the seriousness that it should get, because some types of mild cognitive impairment may be reversible or addressed, and for others there may be steps that people can take to help moderate future cognitive loss. Someone comes to us for a neuropsychological evaluation. We will begin by asking them to fill out a very detailed questionnaire for us to get an idea of their history and what's been going on with them even before they walk in the door. And we will also ask to receive copies of any relevant medical records so that we can review that as well. When they first come in, we ask if they're willing to bring someone else with them, whether it's a family member or a friend or someone who knows them well. If they're comfortable doing that, we encourage and welcome it. Some people don't want to do that, and that's okay too. And we spend about 45 minutes to an hour just kind of getting to know the person and understanding what it is that's troubling them, what they're noticing, what they're finding difficulty in, and also getting a good sense of what that person's baseline functioning is. And after that, we will administer to them a battery of tests, much more in depth than the MOCA or the mini mental status exam, which are, good potential screening measures, but are very cursory. And we will administer a battery of tests so we can see how somebody is functioning across a range of cognitive domains. So that would include things like attention, memory, language skills, utilization of visual and spatial information, and executive skills, which are used in things like planning, organizing, being able to think flexibly. And we want to see how people are doing in those domains relative to other people their age. So they should be performing like other people their age across the lifespan, and they should be performing in the same general category that they would have performed prior to noticing any loss. So, for example, if somebody always functioned in a high average range compared to their age group, they should always function in the high average range, whether they're 20, 50, or 90. So they should stay in that same relative spot on the curve. So we will look at that, and then we put all that information together and then have the person come back, and we will go over with them the results of the testing and our impression as to what we may think is going on. And we will put together a list of pretty comprehensive recommendations, anything from a medical recommendation to require additional medical follow-up, resources in the community that may be of help, pieces of literature, whether we're referring them for psychoeducation to get more information. And I usually do those kinds of feedback sessions with a social worker jointly, so we're each kind of adding our own piece. So we take a multidisciplinary approach. The other piece that I want to add here is that we work very closely with neurologists, psychiatrists, and primary care physicians, geriatricians. And because we happen to also be a research site and have access to different types of brain imaging and other kinds of lab assessments, the other piece of the evaluation is whether it's done through us some way or through a collaborating physician, is to potentially get other pieces of information like results of blood work, results of a brain MRI, or a more specialized type of image. So what we want is to both have an understanding of the cognitive, behavioral, and clinical symptoms, and then we also want to have as many what we call biomarkers, biological information, to see whether those things correlate or support each other in some way to help us arrive at a potential diagnosis.
So as you can see, there's a lot that goes into a proper diagnosis, and I hope that's what happened for you. But we know that many people aren't getting that kind of evaluation or even anything close to it. If you're one of those people, let's do something about that. Next week, Dr. Papka will be back to talk about how to get the evaluation and diagnosis you deserve. I hope you'll join me for that. See you next Sunday. Until then, as always, be kind to your mind.